Huimin is shackled, sitting in a room engulfed in darkness. Suddenly, the lights come on and someone announces the next item, the final diamond of today's auction. The boy thinks this must be the same dominant Omega. He can't comprehend where he is. Once, a friend gave Huimin a book where the main character shared his name. Huimin stumbled upon a strange word and asked what it meant. Omegaverse. His friend Nuna told him he'd understand after reading. The book is titled Silence. As Nuna said, the protagonist, who shares his name, exists in a tragic yet captivating BL novel. After a traumatic childhood event, the dominant Omega, Huimin, developed a fear of alphas. Because of this, he had to avoid his old friend, Iheon, who later became a dominant alpha. In solitude, Huimin found solace in painting. But as he grew older, his father sold him at an auction to pay off gambling debts. The auctioneer presents a valuable item. Height 178 cm, weight 58 kilo. For some reason, Huimin sees this scene even in his dreams. He wonders if he overdid it with his immersion in the novel. Now, it's led to such realistic dreams. It all began when, for the first time in his life, he picked up a BL novel with a tragic story of enslavement, which he read to the end. At the time, Huimin thought the author was truly talented. The scene where the protagonist Huimin cradled Iheon's lifeless body after Iheon sacrificed himself was so shocking it brought him to tears. Maybe he became too absorbed in the other Huimin's suffering, and now he's being auctioned, starting at 100 million won. The bidding stopped at 500 million won. Huimin wonders if all of this might be real after all. It feels like virtual reality. Someone bid 700 million won. In the Silence universe, dominant Omegas are rare and highly valued. Wealthy and powerful alphas would spare no expense to possess one. Sitting in a cage, the boy wonders, even if this isn't a dream, where else could you experience something like this? Suddenly, he smells something unusual and realizes it's pheromones. Different from regular human scents, yet instantly recognizable. He marvels at how even such fine details can be felt in a dream. Suddenly, he feels nauseous. Breathing heavily, a name surfaces in his mind. The title of the novel. Most of the people in the auction hall are alphas. Feeling alpha pheromones 10 times more intensely than they actually are is a unique trait of Huimin's body. Sensing them so vividly, he misinterprets reality, deciding this isn't a dream and that he's truly become Huimin. Huimin asks the host for water. The bidding has already reached 1.7 billion won. The host ignores him, so Huimin asks again, insisting he needs water before he throws up. He thinks it would only make things worse if he got sick here. The host tosses him a bottle, telling him to shut up. He opens the bottle, wondering why the dream feels so real. Drinking the water, he feels a bit better. The bidding reaches 2.5 billion won. One way or another, Iheon will be sold for 3 billion won, as the dream unfolds exactly like the novel. Huimin wonders where he is and is curious about Iheon's appearance. While reading the novel, he was most intrigued by what Iheon's face looked like, as his only friend shared the same name. The fact that the protagonist had the same name didn't guarantee he'd finish the book, but the final part was so compelling he had no choice but to keep reading. In the novel, Iheon was a dominant alpha, handsome, stylish, and the complete opposite of his real-life friend. Reading about him didn't bother Huimin. He's still curious about how gangster Iheon will appear. Someone bids 5 billion. The auctioneer declares a winner. A man approaches Huimin's cage, commenting that only 10 years have passed and Huimin still has such a charming face. Even if it's a dream, why does Iheon look exactly the same? Iheon has matured, but his face hasn't changed. Iheon remarks that Huimin looks pleased and notes that he sold for 5 billion won, more than in the book. Iheon asks if Huimin's been wandering around and decided to put on this kind of show. He says he paid 2 billion extra because of it, and Huimin wonders if he's referring to his earlier request for water. Crushing the bottle, Iheon says Huimin isn't even worth a few thousand won. Iheon adds that when an old classmate keeps getting into shady situations for pocket change, it ruins the mood, doesn't it? He asks Huimin if he agrees. Iheon concludes that he just needed someone to vent his pheromones on. To be with Huimin, Iheon is willing to spend not just 5,000 won, but 1 billion. He tells the boy to show him what 5 billion really looks like. Huimin is surprised that this line is exactly the same as in the book. He thinks it's unbearably vulgar. Once during class, Iheon asked Huimin what his plans were for the holidays. The boy suggested they go to America together. He explained that his relatives had a house there, so they could travel together. He asked Huimin not to refuse since he knew he didn't have anyone else to hang out with. Huimin said he didn't have the money for it. Iheon asked why he'd need money when he'd pay for everything. Huimin replied that he planned to attend a training center and would need to study to earn a certificate. Iheon said that was admirable and suggested they go out together sometime. Huimin wonders if he had followed Iheon's advice back then. Would things have turned out differently? Sitting in the cage, Huimin suddenly starts laughing. Iheon asks what's so funny about what he said. Huimin thinks it's because he's speaking with the face of his friend. He tells himself not to mix them up. He says it's just that their personalities are very different, that's all. Iheon grabs his hand and notices bruises, saying it looks like something terrible happened to him if he's not in his right mind. Huimin only then notices the bruises and wonders why there are so many marks from injections. Iheon lights a cigarette and asks how long he's been given drugs. Huimin smells the smoke and wonders why it's so unbearably acrid. He feels incredibly weak. Iheon stubs out the cigarette and tells his secretary, Chan, to take the boy home. He also orders Professor Hvan to detox him from the drugs. Huimin wonders if Iheon cared about him enough to put out the cigarette. The boy begins to recall that Iheon had a terrible obsession with Huimin. Huimin thinks what a strange dream this is. He even got to see a 30-year-old Iheon. He feels a little sad the dream will end, but thinks it was an interesting experience. Over time, he realizes the dream isn't ending. He can't return to the real world. He understands it wasn't a dream. He's actually inside the novel. A doctor sets up an IV for him and tells him to rest until the treatment is finished. Professor Fan pities the boy for falling into the hands of human traffickers and enduring so much. Fan works as a doctor for the Ushin group. Huimin addresses him as Grandpa, but Fan says he's no such thing and asks to be called Professor. Huimin corrects himself and says he's hungry. He suggests making some ramen. Huimin eats the noodles and asks if the professor is sure he doesn't want to join him. Hvan declines, saying he's not hungry. Huimin says it's lonely eating alone and invites him to share the meal. The boy asks why the only water brand in the house is Vion. The professor comments that the drugs must have worn off if he's saying nonsense like that. Huimin asks why he said that and insists his thoughts are perfectly clear. After eating, he feels dizzy and decides to think things through. No matter how he looks at it, it's obvious this is the same house where Iheon locked Huimin in the novel. Everything matches, even the glass prison-like window. He thinks if this really is silence, then only cruel and unpleasant events await him in the future. And that's a problem. Iheon loves Huimin, but his hatred for him burns even stronger. The reason is that Iheon's father committed suicide after Huimin's father took over his company. Since childhood, they saw each other as brothers. But Iheon's mother suffered a mental breakdown, leaving her in a vegetative state. Iheon discovered he was a dominant alpha and told Huimin, only for Huimin to break off all ties with him. Iheon endured this pain in solitude. Despite everything, Iheon believed in Huimin to the very end because he loved him so deeply. Iheon wrote to Huimin, saying he would wait to meet him. However, at the meeting place, the ones waiting for Iheon were a gang of thugs. Beaten, Iheon waited for Huimin all night. As the sun rose, his love for Huimin turned into fierce hatred. After that, he joined his great-uncle's company. That's how he became the present-day Iheon. He grew crueler, building a criminal empire and using violence. According to the novel's plot, after reuniting with Huimin, Iheon committed many terrible acts, especially toward Huimin. Huimin promises to repay everything and begs Iheon to let him go. Iheon says if that's the case, he'll send him an invoice and asks how much he thinks his father's life was worth if his own is so expensive. Huimin wonders what to do and if there's truly no way back to his reality. When Iheon enters the dining room, he remarks how ironic it is that an Omega who despises alphas and sees them as nothing more than beasts can now sit face to face with one and eat. Iheon grabs Huimin by the hair and tells him to get up. Huimin thinks that Iheon just arrived, yet he's already acting insane. Iheon asks if Huimin thought he could befriend the professor in exchange for helping him escape. Huimin realizes he misunderstood the situation entirely. Vaughn asks the president to calm down. He reminds him that the boy has only just woken up. Huimin feels sick from the overpowering pheromones coming from Iheon. Iheon keeps holding him by the hair, telling him not to lower his eyes. He orders Huimin to look directly at him. Huimin thinks that even if he wanted to, he couldn't because of Iheon's pheromones. Iheon raises his fist as if to hit him and asks if he wants to die. Suddenly, Fawn admits that he was the one who suggested Huimin eat with him. He explains that taking medicine on an empty stomach isn't safe. He insists that the boy hasn't done anything wrong. He tells Iheon to pay more attention to his own injured hand. He points out that it needs treatment first and urges him to stop. Iheon tells his secretary Chan that it's too late now and orders him to escort the professor out. The professor pleads with Iheon not to harm the boy for now, warning that his body could fail at any moment. Iheon thanks him for his concern but tells him to avoid such unproductive actions in the future. Huimin reflects on how careless he's been. This man isn't his friend Iheon. He's a scoundrel who wouldn't hesitate to hit or blackmail someone. Iheon resembles his friend so closely, both in appearance and name, that Huimin had unknowingly convinced himself he wouldn't harm him. He scolds himself for taking this lightly, especially now that he's in Huimin's position. He worries that at this rate he'll die in this strange place from beatings. He recalls that he still hasn't paid off his student loans. He had planned to follow Nuna's path, get a job at a big company, and live a prosperous life. Iheon hugs him, and Huimin wonders why he ever read that book. If he had known, he never would have picked it up. He cries out for his mother and Nuna. Iheon says he can't tell if Huimin has truly gone mad from the drugs or is just pretending. Huimin insists he isn't crazy, repeating that he has a mother and Nuna and knows nothing about this place. Iheon grabs him by the throat, telling him to stop talking nonsense. Iheon declares that Huimin's body has been sold to him, and no matter what he does, he won't let him go. He assures him there's no way to escape. Huimin recalls how the protagonist in the novel never managed to escape until his death. All because of Iheon. Iheon made him hate him yet completely depend on him. The boy realizes he truly belongs to Iheon now. Iheon throws clothes at him and leaves the room, telling him to get dressed and come out. Huimin wonders if Iheon will attack him and is confused as to why the man has stopped tormenting him. Suddenly, Iheon hears strange noises coming from Huimin's room. He enters and asks what happened. He sees Huimin staring at a mirror and asks why he's looking at his reflection like that. Huimin wonders if he wasn't described as an exceptionally beautiful Omega. So why does he see his own face in the mirror? Iheon takes Huimin to the Heesun Mental Health Center. They enter the office of the director, Ingjon. The woman asks Iheon about his relationship with Huimin. He replies that they're partners. Huimin hadn't expected to end up in a psychiatric clinic. He wonders why his aunt Ingjon is here as a doctor, and why all the people close to him appear as characters in this story. The doctor says that if they're partners, it would be best for him to listen carefully. She reveals that a thorough analysis has shown signs of dissociative identity disorder. In other words, split personality disorder. Ingjon explains that Huimin believes he's 21 years old, but his memories also contain fragments of a 30-year-old identity. She asks if he's aware that two separate selves exist within his body simultaneously. Huimin says he doesn't think he coexists with a 30-year-old soul. Instead, he occasionally experiences memories like watching scenes from another person's life. The doctor asks Iheon if his name happens to be Iheon. He asks how she knows his name. Ingjon explains that when Huimin was in high school, he showed her a painting featuring Iheon. Since they were best friends, Iheon's image remained etched in Huimin's memory. She asks Huimin how he's been managing his insomnia since his sleeping pills must have run out. Huimin now realizes why the clinic's name felt familiar. He used to visit it as a child. Iheon comments that the boy sleeps soundly, so deeply that it's almost unbelievable. Ingjon notes that a lot has changed over time. She mentions that she hadn't heard from him for 6 months and was worried, but is glad to see he's on the path to recovery. She says this makes her truly happy, and Huimin is glad to see his aunt. She remarks that while his partner may feel uncomfortable, it's important not to reject the new identity completely, as it's already a part of Huimin. She advises Iheon to show warmth and care toward him so that this self doesn't fall into chaos, as Huimin already carries many emotional scars. Huimin thinks it's unimaginable how Iheon, who once knew him as someone raised in comfort and now keeps him as the enemy's son, is hearing about his diagnosis. He feels that whatever happens, at least it's good everything was explained to him. He tells Iheon that he's pleased to meet him, though he's not the same Huimin anymore. As they leave the office, Huimin asks if it's legal for him to attend the appointment with him. Iheon replies that partner consultations are legal, especially since Huimin is his property. Huimin asks how he knows this, and Iheon says that in 3rd grade, he was keeping an eye on him. He recalls talking to Huimin's father, who explained that Huimin suffered from nightmares and went to the hospital for prescription medication. Every time he met Huimin back then, he would ask him what he dreamed about that day. It was an unusual greeting. Iheon says it's strange that he doesn't feel angry. Huimin responds that he suspected Iheon had been watching him since he never could hide his curiosity. Huimin thinks the important thing is that he handled the situation. Even with a new personality in this body, Iheon still doesn't plan to let him go, which is a problem for Iheon himself. His subconscious has intertwined with the plot of silence, creating a strange world where his loved ones appear with the same faces and names. Huimin wonders what he needs to do to leave this world, whether it's like a game that resets once you reach the ending. Until he finds a way out, his priority will be avoiding conflicts with Iheon and maintaining a neutral relationship. He absolutely cannot allow the original plot to repeat. Thank goodness this man still feels love. He may hate Huimin, but deep down he fears being hated by him in return. Yet now, it seems that trying to become good friends with him might only annoy him further. Huimin wonders if starting a genuine romantic relationship with Iheon would be safer for him. Wouldn't improving their relationship benefit both of them? However, it's unclear whether they could restore the same bond they once had before things fell apart. He decides that no matter the cost, he will win Iheon over to his side. If he succeeds, he could bring back the kind and good version of Iheon from their school days. Huimin asks Iheon to give him his hand. He says he got a bandage from the nurse because Iheon hurt himself. Iheon dismisses it, but Huimin insists that after spending 5 billion won on him, Iheon owes him now. The boy firmly demands Iheon's hand. Iheon complies, and Huimin thinks it's better not to resist. It seems that Iheon likes this, and maybe Huimin even likes him. Huimin asks if Iheon killed someone. Iheon denies it, but Huimin asks why there's so much blood, to which Iheon admits he nearly beat a man to death. The one who was injecting him with drugs. Iheon asks why Huimin keeps addressing him so formally, as though they're strangers. Huimin thinks it's because there's a 9-year age difference between them. Iheon says he doesn't know what plans Huimin is scheming in his head. Huimin replies that he has no plans. Iheon says, "Fine, have it your way." Iheon remarks that this is all very amusing. Huimin notices that Iheon is captivated by his politeness. It really seems like if he insists, Iheon might give in. Huimin wonders what he can do to pique Iheon's interest. It takes experience in relationships to know such things. Iheon warns that if Huimin doesn't stop staring at him, he might cut him up and eat him. He asks why Huimin thinks he paid 5 billion won for him. Huimin assumes it's because Iheon adores him and asks if it's because they went to school together. Iheon says he's wrong and that he has other plans for him. He adds that it doesn't matter if Huimin is 30 or 21, age is irrelevant. Iheon notes that the professor intervened yesterday, so he stepped back. But today will be different. Huimin says that when Iheon discovered he was a dominant alpha, Huimin started avoiding him. He asks if Iheon knows why. Iheon tells him to explain. Huimin reveals that in elementary school, an alpha severely bullied him. That's why he developed a trauma related to alphas. Iheon didn't know this story. Huimin's biological mother died giving birth to him, and his relationship with his father was poor. He had no one to rely on except for one person. That exception was a kind schoolteacher who was always willing to listen to him. However, after earning his trust, that teacher betrayed him. "You're such a wonderful child. In the future, you'll blossom as a dominant Omega," the man had said, as if casting a curse. The man was eventually arrested and imprisoned, but Huimin's wounds never healed. As if cursed, Huimin did indeed manifest as a dominant Omega. In the end, his close friendship with Iheon fell apart. Huimin tells Iheon he hopes he won't do something he'll regret. Iheon asks if he's the same as that man. Huimin replies that he isn't sure if the trauma has transferred to Iheon yet. He says his body reacts before his mind can focus. When alpha pheromones are present, breathing becomes difficult. At the house entrance, they're greeted by the assistant, Anne. Iheon asks Anne to stay at the house today until he returns from work. It's clear that Iheon's distrust of Huimin is incredibly high. Iheon asks Anne to order pizza for Huimin. Huimin asks if he can add a steak to the order. He also asks if they can include 3 extra spicy sauces with the pizza. Huimin notices Iheon staring at him and asks if it's really not allowed. He wonders if it's too expensive and says they can order something cheaper instead. Iheon replies that Huimin can order whatever he wants. Huimin says he'll enjoy the meal and thanks him. The boy asks if it was just his imagination or if Iheon actually smiled just now. Iheon denies it. Huimin asks if he's heading to work again and when he'll be back. Iheon says he doesn't know yet. Huimin asks if that means he'll have to eat dinner alone and insists on at least knowing an approximate time. Iheon says he has no idea and tells Huimin to stop asking silly questions and stay in his room. Huimin asks if it's necessary to stay in his room. He says he'd like to watch TV in the living room. He adds that there's nothing in his room and asks if Iheon doesn't think it's boring. Iheon gives him permission. Though it surprises even himself, it seems like Iheon is starting to listen to him. The novel never described the house's location. Aside from this house, Huimin has never seen such a spacious living space. He thinks his imagination is truly lacking. In the author's other novels, the stories ended with a wedding scene where the main characters exchanged rings and vowed eternal love. In an attempt to change their style, the author wrote a new novel which became Silence. Even for the author, the ending was unbearably sad, but adding a happy ending would have made it impossible to bring the story to a close. Huimin reflects on how his minor actions have already changed the plot so much. The challenge now is figuring out how to save everyone from their deadly fates and guide the story toward a happy ending. At least he has one solid advantage. He knows all the upcoming events and every character who will appear. Even if his hypothesis turns out wrong, to avoid being beaten by Iheon, he decides he'll need to seduce him. After all, until middle school, Huimin had a good relationship with Iheon. Iheon was the first to initiate their friendship. It was only after being betrayed by someone he loved that Iheon suddenly changed. This proves he wasn't bad from the start. Huimin decides to win over Iheon and achieve a happy ending complete with a ring on his finger. If he can return to his reality before that, even better. In any case, it's worth trying. If he thinks of himself as the player in a romance simulator, everything might work out. A few days pass. Though his decision was ambitious and full of determination, Iheon still hasn't been around. More accurately, Iheon has been coming home, but only briefly at night. He sleeps a little and leaves again. Such busy days have become more frequent. Without saying anything, Iheon just looks at him straight in the face and then heads to his room. Huimin feels like he's being treated as part of the furniture. He wonders if Iheon is acting this way because he's realized Huimin isn't the same person he once loved. Could that be why Iheon has lost interest in him? Huimin thinks about what he can do today to make some progress. Tomorrow, Iheon is set to take over as president of Shinwon Cement. This was the company Huimin's father once managed, but Iheon destroyed it out of revenge. More importantly, after the ceremony, Iheon will force Huimin to relive that event. Even though Iheon now knows about Huimin's trauma, there's no guarantee he won't use violence against him. It's impossible to feel safe. Huimin thinks they need to talk before something terrible happens. At dinner, Huimin asks Anne if Iheon won't be coming home tonight either. Anne says she doesn't know the president's schedule. Huimin asks if she's eaten yet and offers to have dinner with her if she hasn't. Anne declines the offer. Huimin insists, saying it's lonely eating alone. Anne agrees to eat one slice of pizza, but Huimin urges her to take 3. Anne asks if he's tired of eating pizza since he's been having it every day. Huimin says not at all. He loves pizza. He explains that a friend used to treat him to pizza often, which brings back memories. That friend was Iheon. Iheon would order pizza that he himself wanted to eat but couldn't. One day during class, Iheon approached Huimin and said he must be very hungry. Huimin hadn't brought a lunchbox that day and was starving. Iheon apologized and said he'd make sure next time wouldn't be so noisy. Then Iheon asked what Huimin liked more, pizza or burgers. Guessing that Huimin preferred pizza, he said he liked it too and asked if Huimin could already guess what they'd be eating. Over pizza, Huimin asked how much it cost and offered to pay half. Iheon said there was no need. After all, he was the one inviting him. Iheon added that next time Huimin could treat him, confessing that he couldn't stand eating alone because it was far too lonely. Huimin thanked him and wondered why Iheon had started talking to him and even invited him over to his house. After all, he could have invited any of their classmates. Anyone would have agreed. Iheon asks why Huimin spends every lunch break in the library. Huimin asks how he knows he goes there every day. Iheon says he saw him by chance and asks why he doesn't eat lunch. Huimin explains that his mother is too busy with work to prepare a lunchbox, and buying food feels like a burden. Iheon asks if he should ask his aunt to pack an extra thermos for Huimin. Huimin asks why he would do that. There are only a few days left in the school year anyway. He assures Iheon that he's fine. Iheon insists he's not fine, pointing out how loudly his stomach growls. He laughs and apologizes. Iheon explains that his aunt always cooks too much, and snacks often go to waste. He says it would be better for Huimin to eat with him than to throw the food away. Huimin thanks him for his kindness. The boy wonders if he's understanding correctly. Does Iheon actually care about him? He thinks Iheon might be a better person than he initially thought. The pizza tastes incredibly delicious to him. Huimin wonders if Iheon has already left for America. He thinks Iheon will probably be very surprised when he comes back and finds him gone. Stuck here, he feels bored. Huimin hopes that the version of him in his past life is doing well. While he's not exactly bored, he's certainly lonely. At 10 p.m., Secretary Chan brings him the book he had requested. Huimin thanks him but wonders where Iheon is. He asks if the director is working late again because of him. Chan says that's not the case. Huimin asks if someone could call Iheon and ask when he'll be back. Chan says Iheon is busy right now and asks not to be disturbed unless it's urgent. It's likely that because of preparations for tomorrow's inauguration, Iheon won't come home tonight. Huimin wonders what to do since they absolutely need to talk today. He's desperate to summon Iheon here. In the original novel, Iheon would drop everything and rush to Huimin whenever he had an episode. Huimin considers breaking a cup or something similar but feels ashamed to cause trouble in front of An. He wonders if something shocking needs to happen for someone to call Iheon. He throws a pillow on the floor and demands that they call Iheon immediately, threatening to get very angry otherwise. He had hoped the pillow would burst open and scatter feathers like in the movies, but nothing happens. Frustrated, he repeats his demand that Iheon be summoned quickly. Chan asks him to stop behaving this way and return to his room. Huimin wonders if Chan thinks he's joking. Huimin presses a knife to his throat and repeats that Iheon must be called here at once. In that moment, he feels scared and hopes he won't accidentally hurt himself. Chan urges him to put the knife down. Huimin refuses and insists they call Iheon. Suddenly, Iheon enters the room and orders him to stop the performance and drop the knife. Unless, of course, he truly intends to die, but only by Iheon's hands. Iheon takes the knife from him and grabs him by the collar. He remarks that it seems Huimin's sanity is slipping if he's thinking about dying. He demands to know what's so important that Huimin caused such a scene. It better be a very good reason. He reminds Huimin that he paid 5 billion won for him. Huimin wonders if he really was worth that much. Could the amount truly be 50 times more than he imagined? He thinks, will he die before he even sees how this all ends? He starts crying, and Iheon asks if he thinks tears will accomplish anything. He demands that Huimin quickly explain why he caused such a mess. Huimin says he just missed him terribly. Every day, Iheon ignored him, wouldn't talk to him, and now he's stopped coming home. He explains that he really wants to have a heartfelt conversation with him. He was worried that Iheon might attack him before they could get closer, and he couldn't figure out what to say.